AlbionVC's Women in Leadership series. I'm Jess, an investor with Albion, and I'm joined by our talent director, Jane.
Hi, Jess.
And we're so pleased to have Helen Shaw with us, the co-founder and medical director of Proveca.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Jane. Nice to be talking to you today.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much for making the time. What Jane and I are doing is hosting a series of conversations with the female founders and CEOs in Albion's portfolio. So today we'd like to pick your brain a bit on being a founder and then move into a quick fire round of would you rather questions to learn more about you personally and your leadership style.
Okay.
Just to introduce our audience to your company, Proveca is actually a pharmaceutical company specializing in pediatric drugs. So what your technology platform does is takes existing drugs that are designed for adults and repurposes them to be designed for children. And you specialize in cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and heart failure. So an extremely important mission and an impressive vision of what you're doing. Albion actually first invested in this business in 2013 when it was pre-revenue and developing its very first drugs.
Yeah.
And Helen, your own background is so impressive. You're a medical doctor by training. You've got 25 years of experience in the pharma industry. And prior to Proveca, you were the medical director of the Walgreens Boots Alliance, which, massive role with a massive company. So incredible domain expertise here. But how about you tell us in your own words how you came to found Proveca?
So I was working with Simon. So I was the medical director at Boots Healthcare, which was a division of the Boots company at the time, was subsequently taken over by Walgreens.
Okay.
And the company, my bit of the company, which was specializing in over-the-counter medicines, was sold off to another company. And so I was then offered a job with that company, but I was looking for something different to do. I'd kind of reached the point where I needed a different challenge. And so I did consultancy for a number of years, and I knew I didn't want to work in a big pharma company again. I wanted to work for small companies who needed medical input but didn't need a medical director. And so I was consulting, which was working really well, and I had a lot of clients. And then one of my clients, so I was also on a board for a skincare company. Again, didn't want to go onto a big kind of blue chip type board if I'd have been suitable for that. I wanted to work with small companies where I could make a difference rather than just turn up and eat the biscuits. So I wanted to try and make a difference. And that's why I ended up on the board of a small skincare company. And through that, I met, and through another route as well, through my own kind of initiative, I'd met with Simon Bryson, who's my now business partner. And I joined that company that he had founded already with another guy called Oralis. And I was the medical director there and on the board. And in that context, we developed the very first pediatric use and marketing authorization, or PUMA, which are it's this way of licensing old medicines specifically for children across Europe. And so we developed the first one of those called Bucalam. We developed that. That company was then sold, which is the way of small companies. And Simon and I agreed that there was a huge story still to tell. And so we set up Proveca then based with the focus being solely on children's medicines.
Wow, how cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's such a specialized, but such a, valuable piece of the pharma chain.
Yeah. But not valuable enough for the big companies. So the big companies concentrate on adult medicines where there's a lot of money. With pediatric medicines, it's the real kind of unsung, not even an unsung hero. It's a nuisance for a lot of drug companies because the products are too small, and the pharma and the regulators have changed their view now, and new products coming through have to be developed for children as part of the whole licensing process. but that left these older medicines where nobody really owned them because they were off their patent. And so that's really where this Puma legislation comes in to mop up those older medicines and do the formulations, do the clinical trials, do the manufacturing work, and get those licensed.
Wow, what a special market opportunity you identified then there with the regulation changed.
Yeah, and the really nice thing about it is when we go and talk to paediatricians, they really usually pretty much like us because nobody does what we do. Yeah. So, there's usually a fairly open door to talking to doctors about what they'd like, what we can do for them, and what products they are struggling to find and to having to adapt adult medicines. So it's good. It's a very rewarding area.
Yeah, I can imagine. An incredible mission and niche to sort of own. What would you say, you were a founder, I guess a first or second time founder or so when you started Proveca. Mm-hmm. But what were some of the most sort of unexpected things about your first years as a founder?
It's the first time I'd done it. So some of the unexpected things were, I think, getting used to the fact that this was our responsibility. This was my responsibility to make this work. This was, very much my future in my own hands. I've always considered my future's in my own hands, and it's up to me to make it what it is. But somebody else was paying. So for the first 2 years, we weren't paid. So we did consultancy work to keep ourselves afloat and, to keep my family with a roof over their head and kids in school. And so that was something early on is having that conviction and also not giving every waking moment to it because I needed to earn some money. You can't, the alternative was to put everything on the line and have no money and pray. But, you've got to be, I believe you have to be very realistic in these situations, and you have to think, how am I going to live? How much time am I going to give to this? We were also able to beg, borrow and steal. We were frugal then, we are frugal now. And again, children's medicines people want to help you. So we got a lot of help for free. And we also got lots of government loans and European grants. We worked with a lot of grants so that we didn't pay out a lot of our own money. We paid some, obviously, but those early days, there was a lot of book work, a lot of our own intellectual work, applying for the first stage in the process of the development before we needed to buy product, make product, do clinical trials. That's at that stage. There was a lot we could do before we got to that stage to then get the investment because we had a plan.
Yeah, I think that's something that's not talked about enough, I think. The planning and the personal financial planning and hard work that has to go into making that leap to make this your full-time job, to be running this small startup. There's a lot of risk there and a lot of courage required. So it's great to hear that, you guys were really thoughtful about it, drew on available resources and then made the leap.
Yeah, you just said it. It's the resourcefulness, I think, which is underplayed in those very early stages that you've just articulated brilliantly. It's
well, we knew we had to make money. We had to live. Mm-hmm. We had to live, and because there was so much that we could do for free, in effect, so I would put myself on the cheapest train ticket down to the British Library and go and spend hours researching finding the documentations and photocopying what I was allowed to photocopy there at a very low cost to be able to write the documents I needed to write, rather than paying one of the companies on the internet £50 a time for the allowance to use a particular document.
Wow. That's amazing, and the courage to make that leap in the end. It takes a lot. So can you, reflecting on your journey since those first years, what do you think the biggest change you've seen in yourself is?
Being comfortable not recruiting in the process, but being responsible for people's salaries. It's not something I've ever had to do before, that paying people who work for the company. And it happened, I guess it happened in a sort of an organic way, in that we got the investment, and from that we were able to pay ourselves a little bit and then start hiring people. And we still begged, borrowed and stolen, and we still are very, we're always very frugal with the money. I keep coming back to that, but especially working on other boards, I see the kind of founders or the inventors, they get the investment and they kind of, like you said, Jane, almost like think it's their own money. And they can do with it what they will, and it's a it's a bottomless pit.
Supply, yeah.
And yet, because they are invariably they're all new to this industry, and I was coming in, helping on the board with a lot of startups. That's very much where I position myself. Was what they didn't understand is you keep having to go back for more and more, and it's so time consuming. So the more that you can make of your existing investment and the next one, just make it last as long as possible. To me, it makes a huge difference to just have that awareness of the investment. You need to make the most of that investment, because it's a pain going back for more.
Yeah, it's a really smart counsel. And so kind of at odds in a way for the current environment, which is that there's so much capital available that if this is your first time raising, you could be forgiven for finding it really easy, but actually what you're articulating there is for the long term and for the long haul, that planning, that rigor around frugality and planning and ROI, being really careful about where you invest. Resourcefulness are all skills that capabilities that just very, very good reminders.
Yeah,
absolutely. And not getting trapped in that cycle of constantly fundraising. Then the only people you're talking to are investors and not your customers or your employees, or focusing on your business, but getting caught in that cycle of always raising capital. So it sounds like you've been
Sorry, yeah, and there's a real kind of need to have the courage in your convictions as well, because especially given that we've been involved in Oralis and Simon had set Oralis up, we knew our area and we know what our area. We know children's medicines, and we've obviously learned so much over the years, and we know we can work with regulators. And when you get knockbacks from the regulators, the issue is knowing that you can argue your position and be prepared to defend your position, because actually you're the expert in it. And we found that particularly with some investors, that people didn't believe that we could do what we were doing, even though we kind of partly demonstrated it once. But when you get a lot of pushback from the regulator and then everyone else sees that and say that's too hard, if you are convinced about your position without being pig-headed about it, but you've got the data behind you and it's a solid proposition that you're making, sticking with that and knocking the questions off one by one it's so important. So yes, we got knocked back by a lot of investors, but we were right. We did what we said we would do. It wasn't easy and it took a long time, but the money lasted because, we'd been frugal with it and we stuck to our guns that there is a way through this.
Yeah, I love that lesson of sort of knowing your domain so well that you can really have that courage in your vision and faith in your vision, and then be able to support it by delivering over time.
And also the resilience to setbacks, right? It's like you've obviously developed more of a thick skin potentially than when you first started, right? Would that be a fair?
I've always had a fairly thick skin.
Oh, okay. You were well primed then. You had the talent.
Yeah. but I think there is also something in realism, because I've sat on a few. It was in my Boots days, when I was consulting for Boots, when I was doing my consultancy. We had a few kind of Dragon's Den type things, and there would be people coming in. So we were assessing. I was on the panel assessing products for potentially for Boots to take on, and there would be people coming in who were so convinced, and they'd put so much of their own money into an idea, where if they would actually stand back and say, is this a really sensible idea? Am I the only person who thinks this is a good idea? So we knew there was a need, for instance, in these children's medicines, because we'd spoken to doctors and nurses and parents and pharmacists. We knew that these kids were suffering because there was a lack of the right type of medicine for them, and compliance was poor, and so the disease would not be properly treated, or heart transplants would be rejected, for instance. Whereas some of the people I've spoken to in the past are so convinced and put so much of their own money into something which realistically is not nonsense, but nobody wants it. Somebody has to want what you're making. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to really want it. And there has to be either few people want it enough and are prepared to pay an absolute fortune for it, or lots of people want it. And there is that understanding that there really is a market for your product, whatever it may be, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting those sort of third-party perspectives to sense check what you're doing fits in the market and the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Sort of reflecting on, you said you've always had a thick skin. Reflecting on your sort of own character and your own, strengths and weaknesses. What's a strength that you think has sort of powered you through all these years as a founder and an executive of your own business?
I think resilience, as Jane said. I think being able to just kind of understand myself. I've done a lot of work over the years, and I think it is really important, particularly for women to do, because we've got a different, I think women are still looked at as not necessarily equal to men. I think it's changing. I do think it's changing, but it's almost like you've got to be better without being aggressive. And so I think there's something about how you come across to people and how you can work with people. Suddenly not sure this is answering the question. Yes, what's a good, so I think a lot of self-reflection as well on what are the best ways to work. So something about being, I would call it quite stubborn, means that in your head, and especially as a junior doctor and as a medical student, you learn a way of working. And you have a certain status that allows you to be heard and to be listened to. And when you then move into industry as a woman, especially even whether you have or haven't been used to that kind of position, then you come into industry and or whatever, board meeting, whatever it is, and you still, I think, have to prove yourself. So there has to be a kind of, again, a courage of your convictions, but learning other ways. So I used to get incredibly frustrated because what I was doing, the way I was doing it, wasn't working suddenly when it had worked for all these years in medicine. And I had to learn other ways. Now, I didn't know another way. I couldn't think of another way because I only know this way. I don't know where to go to get. So I worked on that and found other ways to influence people, basically. Don't try and bully people in a meeting, influence them before the meeting, outside of the meeting, and then their position. They're either on your side or against you, but you know what the position is. So it's suddenly the whole dynamics of meetings, for instance, were quite different. So it made me a very different and I believe significantly more effective way of working. I still shout sometimes and swear, but
No, I think that's so important. Sort of, resilience, self-reflection, and then sort of adjusting to your environment and teaching yourself maybe new ways of working or new ways of persuading to get where you need to go. Could you expand a little bit on what you started to talk about the differences maybe as a woman entering industry and maybe the ways you had to adjust? Could you expand a little bit more on how you approached that?
You picked it, a great question, Jess. And maybe to give you the word that I was thinking of was assertive. Like, how did you develop that ability to be able to be assertive rather than, as you say, aggressive, which could be seen as a masculine trait if we're going to go there in terms of genders? Love to know how you've done that.
So I think it's a really hard balance, honestly. I can still be, strong. Some may say aggressive. I don't think it's aggressive. But this information, knowing, again, courage of your convictions, knowing what you're talking about and having that confidence, and overlaid in my case with humor. So I'm not a simpering person. My dad always taught me, I've got 3 brothers, and my dad never ever considered that the female in the family was any less than the males in the family. So I've never ever considered I am less of a person than anyone, quite frankly. I think everybody has the same kind of, we're all on the same level playing field. But I've never, ever considered myself inferior to a man. I think I'm the same. Not in a, men are stronger, men are, all lots of things. But I'm happy to go into a board meeting at any, and invariably boards are full of men still these days. But I'm happy to go into those kind of meetings and hold my own, because I'll do it partly with humour, mostly with listening to start with. People, believe it or not, most people don't think I'm a good listener, but I do, especially early on and coming into new onto a board. I do quite a lot of listening, understanding the different people around, and then start to give my view and opinion. It's a considered view and opinion. I put it strongly, usually not shouting or anything, but I'm confident, really confident in what I'm saying, because I'm usually there often as the only woman, and pretty much always as the only kind of medic, clinical type, that role. I have a lot of hats on.
So fascinating. Unpack that confidence, so for somebody listening to this, they're going to be eating every single word here. How do you unpack that in the moment, right? Is it taking a deep breath? Is it talking deeper? Is it what? Tell me about the mechanics of how you get that confidence across.
I guess being able to back up my arguments, my discussions, knowing what I'm going to say, and just being able to have different ways of saying it. And it's, again, something that was a good thing that I learned in medicine. You don't realize you have any skills when you come out of medicine until you start to analyze it and you realize you've actually got a lot of skills. And one of them is interpreting and explaining complicated data and information to lots of different people. So I can easily have a conversation with another medic and with a consumer or a patient or your family, whatever it needs to be, and use the right language. So it's pitching that language appropriately. And then having other ways of explaining something. So if you're, and again, it's something I've learned, that if you're not getting your point across, you don't just keep saying it louder or more frustratedly. It's about saying it different, and working out, and people will often hear me say, I am obviously not being clear. It's not, you're not understanding me. But I am clear. I am not being clear. I am not explaining this well. So help me explain it. because I will take it. It's my responsibility to make my point, whatever that may be. And if it's not being met appropriately, then I've done something wrong, and there's a better way of doing it.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry, Jess, I cut across you again.
No, that was super helpful. I think being an effective communicator, often as the only woman in the room in many situations, or one of two, or something along those lines, is a challenge that lots of women in lots of industries are facing. So it's helpful to get these even tactics. Find a way to say the same argument slightly differently depending on the audience. Draw on skills from your domain. Is really valuable. So, another question we've been chatting with the CEOs about is when you're a leader of a business like this, you've got sort of a million things going on. It can be a bit chaotic. And we were wondering around, how do you prioritize between different areas of focus? And how have you thought about saying yes versus saying no to things as a leader?
So it happens absolutely all the time in our business, because we've got lots of projects, lots of different areas, whether it's marketing or development or regulatory. There's so many different areas that are pulling on your time. And so the other thing that we also have in this business is deadlines. And those deadlines, you might have two on the same day, but one's got to be in at lunchtime and the other's got to be in at 5. And you kind of work towards that. So having notice of things is really important, and being able to plan your time. I'm a little bit last minute because that's what drives me, but I know that I can't only be last minute. And so there has to be a lot of preparation, and I know that I can finish it in the time, by that deadline, because the regulatory process has deadlines. It has to be this on this day, this on this day. You get so much time between the different stages. It's not negotiable, rarely negotiable. And so there is that. But then there's the other side of it where I might have 4 or 5 different people saying, I need this done today. Not a regulatory deadline, because that's different in my head. But 4 or 5 people saying, I need you to do this. Or one person saying, I need you to do these 7 things today. So I put it back to them. Right, you choose. I can't do all of those, or I can't do them all at once. So you decide. And I'll very commonly will say to 2 people, you decide. You tell me the order that you want these, because you're telling me they both have equal priority. So I'm not going to decide for you. It's not, it's easier if you tell me you want me to do those things. So go away and tell me what you want me to do.
Oh, we're getting a delegation lesson as well. This is amazing.
Yeah, sorry. Because that works, but it works really well for me when you help with those priorities.
Yeah. But then the shared autonomy as well, isn't there? In that?
Yeah. It also works with my children, because I've never ever refused my children a dog. So we don't have a dog, but they've been asking since they were tiny. They're in the early 20s now. And even now, when can we get a dog? That you can have a dog when you leave home and you pay for it. I've never ever said they can't have a dog. So.
Where were you when my daughter said that? And we now have a dog, Helen. And I'm the one that looks after it. So
exactly,
you clearly knew what was going on.
Exactly, you look after it. That's my point.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Shall I dig in, Jess? Just I'm conscious of
go for it.
I feel like we talk all day. In terms of I know it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. The leadership crafting, if you like, and your leadership style that's evolved specifically as you've taken your early stage business and right from the beginning. I'd love to dig into some of these would you rather questions that will not necessarily a juxtaposition. It's not always an either or. It's just really to tease out how you manage the tension, right? Because you always want all of these things, or often want all of these things. So the first thing that I'd love to ask about is specifically in I suppose your area that is so specialist, where specialist skills are required, and you're marrying with the need to be resourceful and bootstrapped. How do you, or would you rather hire for proven performance proven track record or potential? And how do you manage that tension in a bootstrapped environment?
So potential always over proven performance, because I would find that my head thinks, if you've already done the job that I'm bringing you in to do, you want more, you want to move, and I need this job doing. So the potential to do that job is more important. And then the attributes of autonomy and willingness, really critical. Yeah, especially in a little business like ours, there's nowhere to hide, and we don't let people hide.
Yeah. And how much have you dialed into the passion for the mission?
I think the passion, it's hard not to have a passion for children's medicines, really. So it's an easy one for people to get behind in so many ways. And so really for me, it's the passion for working in a small company. And so you'll have a lot of people who've never worked in a big company who don't kind of know what they're missing or gaining, in my view, versus people who will come from a big company who think they're still in one. And I think it's really important that we employ people who understand this is working in a small company. You don't have teams of people working for you, which is where the experience comes in. Proven. If you've got a proven manager who's managed 8 people, you don't bring them in to do the day job if that's what you need doing. And so therefore you've got to have a lot of preparedness to train people and to give people time.
Yeah, fantastic. And as you say, then that willingness to learn, to roll your sleeves up, to get stuck in. So in terms of the team, and I'm sure you're going to want both of those things, or maybe you won't, but the question is, would you rather have trust, which is essential, or harmony? And how do you manage that sort of balance?
Trust, 100%. I mean, harmony comes from trust. So for me, having a harmonious team all the time is just too boring. It suggests to me that there is underlying conflict that's not being resolved, because just chances are, nothing is harmonious the whole time. So to me, it's more important to have the trust to be able to have open discussions and talk about an issue. And resolve it.
How have you done it? Yeah, what's been the most successful thing that you just know now about building trust in your teams?
Talk about things, and it's the same whether it may not be building trust. I mean, I guess it comes from it, but if I'm talking to somebody, having it, explaining like this is what you need to do, and they're just looking at me blank or nodding, and I know that there's no way in hell that they're actually going to do that thing. I'll talk about it. I won't let that go. Right. I'll say, right, I don't feel like you're really that happy with this. So what is it that's bothering you about it? And address it there and then, because going out of a discussion or a meeting or whatever, and you thinking people are going off to do a particular job and they've got no intention of doing it because they don't agree with you, don't believe you, talk about it. I'd sooner know that you're not agreeing with me. And we talk about why, because I may be wrong.
I love that. Yeah, it's the conflict. It's the healthy conflict, isn't it? Healthy debate, disagree and commit. It's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. So as a kind of a tight team, with this culture that you've created, would you rather someone who embodies then that culture and is a role model for it, or someone who is a high performing achiever and productive?
I think you can have both. Because our culture, I mean, we have, I've never been big on all these values and things, because I've worked in big organizations and it's words and big teams of people who go off and create mission statements, and it leaves me cold. But we did work on ours a little while ago, and we've got what we agreed as a company, and it's really helped in our hiring and our culture going forward, is that we are a family of passionate pioneers because not many people do or want to do what we do, because there's not a huge amount of money compared to normal pharma in it. You have to be passionate, because we're a small organization and it's not big industry and you can't hide. So you have to really want to do what you do. But overriding something that Simon and I have said right from the outset is it's a family. So we do know everyone. We will continue, no matter how big this organization gets, we'll continue to know everyone, because one of the things that we have is meet the founders. So any new person comes in, we have, sadly, it started at just before the lockdown. So the idea was that we would meet whoever they are, and they would come and spend some time in Manchester. And we'd have a coffee with them in the Midland Hotel, which was where we formed and where we agreed we were going to be a company. We found our name and
Nice.
in the coffee lounge of the Midland. So that's what we're going to do. It's just so far our Meet the Founders time has been a half an hour chat of me and Simon just telling it like it was back, what we've done over the last 10, 11 nearly years, with everybody new who starts. And there's usually 2 or 3 people in a group within 1-2 months of them starting. So, and family is really important. So you work 9 to 5. If you need to go to your kids' sports day, you don't book a half day off. You go to your kids' sports day. If you need a doctor's appointment, you don't need time off. If you've got to drive your daughter back to uni, maybe you might take half a day off for that one, but it's all allowed. Taking your daughter to school in the morning, and then you come to work, it's all allowed within your 9 to 5, because people do the work. If we look after people, so everybody,
you bring the value to life. It's amazing.
And that's how we recruit. So it's really important that we recruit people who will fit the family. And so people who don't want to play the game, is that the right? Don't want to. We have processes for a pharmaceutical industry. We have to have processes. If you don't want to do it in a different way, and you just want to do it differently because you don't want to fit in, you're not going to fit in. We've got a way of doing it, and talking to people and treating people. Everybody in the company knows everyone else. We have Friday afternoon drink session on Zoom and we play games and we do quizzes and just chat, whatever. Because we are a family, and I know it sounds a bit trite, but it's the biggest of the most important of our values is that family comes first, whether that's the Proveca family or our own families.
Yes, exactly. And the two can go together. And so you see people as their whole people, whole person with all aspects of their lives. Amazing. I'm really conscious of time, so I'd love to get into. No, what an amazing lesson on culture. And the thing that I'm noticing is, because people will have seen these, the first season now, is that as we get into this second season, it's new things that come up in the topic. Jess, do you agree?
For sure.
Yeah. So the quick fire round then, to get to know a little bit about kind of you on the inside, your psyche. Just a bit of fun here, really, but insightful nevertheless. So, would you rather learn a new musical instrument, or would you rather learn a new sport?
I guess musical instrument or sport.
Particularly.
I'm not good at either of them, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. If anything, what would you like to learn next? Should you have the time?
To just improve skiing.
Travel.
Learn more about countries, traveling.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. Well said. As a super skill then, or as a sort of a hidden talent, would you rather be able to see the future or read people's minds?
I'm not wild on either. I have no interest in seeing the future. Absolutely none whatsoever, because it takes all the fun out of it.
Oh, wow.
You know what's coming? I'd hate that.
I'd love to know the future.
Not at all. Not at all. So, so read people's minds, maybe. I don't know, you see, because what if they don't like me? And probably don't. So I don't want to know that either. I like my ignorance.
Yeah.
Fair enough. What would you have then as your hidden talent, your magic?
I can't believe somebody at the door. My hidden talent would be my superpower. Sorry. Like travel without the traveling. So I just have to think about it, and I'm in, South Africa or on the Inca Trail or doing the Great Wall of China.
Oh, Dorothy's shoes then, that's what you need to look.
Yeah.
Would you rather have a pause button on your life or a rewind?
Oh, absolutely a pause. No point in a rewind. Sorry about the background noise if you can hear it. No point in a rewind. I have no regrets. I decided this early on. You make the best decision with the information you have available at the time. And as long as you make what you feel is the best decision always with the right spirit, then why have regrets? So I actually don't have regrets.
Yeah, love that.
Sounds
so strong. So you are both of these. You are both of these things, Helen. But would you rather be funnier than you are or smarter than you are?
I had to think about that one. Probably smarter. I quite like how funny I am.
I love that. It's brilliant. Would you rather never age or never need sleep to function?
Never age.
Never age, yeah. Tough, isn't it? I'm definitely.
But not stopping at this age. I'd like to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Still gain all the wisdom. I'd love to be in my 20s with what I know now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Just
what would you do?
I'm not saying.
Oh, I'd definitely party harder.
Okay, that's probably the polite way of party harder.
Party harder, yeah. Worry less, party harder, yeah. And so you're going to answer, well, we think we know with this anyway, but would you rather die in 20 years with no regrets or live to 100 and have a few?
Well, I could cope with a few because I don't have any, so I'll go as long as I can, happily.
Amazing. I love that. Over to you, Jess.
Fantastic. Well, we just like to sort of wrap it up on words of wisdom, perhaps. So thinking back on your journey, what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I would think a few things, but the key would be not to worry. I never was a worrier, but don't worry about it. On the little things that I thought, am I good enough? Can I do this? Never stopped me doing the thing, but there was no point worrying about it. And the other one would be learn to have cut my own fringe before lockdown. I tell you, honestly, God, what a pain. I'm sorry, I'm not even going to try.
It looks really good. It looks great. You're an expert now.
Yeah, one of the times I ended up in eye casualty because I sharp fingers, scissors in my eye. It's like, honest to God, it's pathetic.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Helen. This has been really, really valuable for us. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Jane. Lovely to meet you both.